inspiring.
Hello, fellow weird and wild ones. It has been a minute. So much has evolved and changed about your lovely host, me, goddess, and Sunseed community since season 4 of the podcast. And I am stoked to share some of the dope ass folks I've met, been in community with, and have learned from along the way in season 5 of the SSC podcast. So grab your drink, get your snacky snacks, and gather your homies for the end times. End of what? I'm really not sure, but I really hope it's fascism. But I digress. Different conversation. Let's get on with the show.
You are inspiring. You are inspiring. You are inspiring. You are inspiring. You are inspiring at least 22,000 times a day. So inspiring. He's so inspiring.
I'm Marquesa Tucker Harris, Executive Director with the African American Roundtable in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Art's vision is a joyful political home for Black people to thrive in liberated and interconnected communities. Our mission at the African American Roundtable is to organize, nurture, and transform Black leaders to build power in service of Black liberation. We get to do such amazing work here in the city of Milwaukee alongside residents. We'd love for you to learn more about our work. Visit us at aartmke.org.
Katie, thank you so much for coming on the Sunsuit Community podcast. I'm really excited to have you on today. I'm going to start off by introducing you to the folks that are listening, and then we'll get into it. So Khadijat A. Oluwatoyin is an attorney specializing in conflict resolution and community building. Having navigated challenging relationship dynamics in adolescence and intentional, transparent conflict resolution methods as an adult, Khadijat has a distinctive blend of professional expertise combined with a deep understanding of impactful communication strategies. With her interdisciplinary approach, she empowers those she works with to resolve conflict without abandoning themselves while maintaining integrity and grace. I love that part about not abandoning ourselves. So again, Katie, thank you for joining us. So who are you bringing into the space with you today? And when we answer this question, can you also share your pronouns?
So thank you guys for having me here. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I am bringing, we just celebrated, for those who do celebrate Mother's Day, Mother Day's weekend, and I'm bringing into the space my maternal ancestors. So my grandmas, great-grandmas, great-great-grandmas on both sides, my mom's side and my dad's side, my maternal ancestors, whoever they may be, who have shown me and graced me with light and love and just a lot of good intention and support. So I'm bringing them into the space.
I shaded that. Yes to the ancestors. Yeah, I think who I'm bringing into the space with me. So before we even started, I was telling you about Sydney Morgan, and so I'm definitely bringing her into the space with me. I just got done with her restorative justice training, and it just opened me up to so many more tools around thinking about how we do this conflict care work. Um, I'm also bringing in my ancestors, always, 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 and the lessons I've learned about how to engage in conflict and how not to engage in conflict, for sure. Um, yeah, so thank you for sharing that.
Sharing that. Do you mind if I expand a little bit? I want
Yes,
to why.
yes, please.
So in my overall self-recovery, just recovering the self from a lot of misbeliefs and hurtful theologies that I was raised in to practice, I have learned that a lot of maternal figures, including my mom, at a point our relationship was strained, really underwent a lot of violence, even if they don't recognize it to be violence. Violence that have been stemmed under white supremacy, misogyny, sexism, etc., that really didn't, in my opinion, allow them to be who they are, to communicate in the way that they wanted to show the light that we all possess. So with that being said, in my overall self-recovery, me creating a new relationship with my mom and learning about the people who became before her, my parents don't really like to talk a lot about our ancestors because of the taboo that comes with the Yoruba traditional religion. They like to stick with, talking about Islam and that part. But it's like, no, I want to learn and I want to learn and be in communications with that part of who I am also. And I think that goes to why I'm bringing them in. I think a lot of times in our heritage, in our lineage, we have been shut down, taught what to believe, what to talk about, what not to talk about, what to do. And even though I don't have their full story, I'm bringing them into this space to be able to say whatever the HE. I don't know if you curse in this podcast.
Yes, we do.
Sorry, curse. To bring and say whatever the hell they want because they have their right to do that. So that's why I'm bringing them into the space to be able to communicate what I have learned since being in not only my law school and these credentials and the programs that I've been in terms of communication, but also the spiritual side of communication, of not being afraid to be who you are and say what you need to say. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay, the spiritual side of communication could be its own podcast episode because there is something to that. And I think what you were talking about around the ways in which we kind of view, we're taught to view conflict, or the ways in which we what is not acceptable or normal. I think that also goes into that too of spiritual communication, because we are taught, especially as Black folks who are perceived to be femme or are femme. There's a certain way in which we were taught to put up with things under the guise of strength and resilience. And I think that feeds into how we hold conflict, and also what is the energy with which we're moving in it. So could you just speak to that for a second? I know it's off topic off of what we have planned, but could you just say more to that? Because I think it needs to be in the space.
Okay, so hopefully I am touching. Well, ask the question one more time just so I can really make sure I'm answering to it.
Yes. Okay. So let me consolidate my thoughts for a second. I think what I'm asking you is, could you say more about how we gauge what is or isn't acceptable or normal in relationships, and how that feeds into spiritual communication that you're talking about, spiritual communication you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, I do want to just give the not the disclaimer, but the little pre-note that spiritual communication looks different for a number of people. For me, how it looks like, I, again, have grown up in a Nigerian Islamic household where, when I say things about my household, I just think about my parents giving me I just see them right there, looking at me shut up. But you know what? No, this is about communication, and communication involves honesty and transparency and truth telling. I grew up in not only in a household, but even in a mosque, in a community. Even when I went to school, I went to a private, I went to a private Catholic school. Folks said, "Why did you go there if you're Muslim?" My parents thought that they had the best education in the town that I grew up in. So I grew up again with Muslims, Nigerians, and Pakistan Muslims, and with Catholic Irish people. And throughout my experience of growing up, it just seemed like children were objects. It seemed like women were objects. We were told and constantly not to talk back, not to say like what we're feeling. If we feel like we were wronged, we couldn't say that we were wronged. If I felt like you were lying, even as an adult, I couldn't say that you were lying, even though you were lying. Oh. So I have had the experience of me being a kid, and if you ask, I was great when it came to like grades, but I always had a disciplinary, I guess, track since like even middle school, because they always said I was defiant, and I was. And I was. I used to look back and think like, I used to feel so ashamed before I started getting in tune with my ancestors of like why, I just couldn't really listen to adults. But because I didn't need to listen to them. What they were saying was bullshit. They weren't embodying the adult that I wanted to grow up to be. And now as an adult in self-recovery, recovering myself, my true being, I can look back and say, you guys were absolutely bullshitters. You guys were absolutely not following your own advice. You led on control and power, not love and community. Most of you did nothing for my betterment. You did it for your own personal feelings, right? So for me, there was a point where I would blame a lot of my trauma. And I think it's okay. Like, I think there's stages to accepting things that have happened to you and processing it. So there was a time where I would be like blaming a lot of my trauma and my addiction for those. I mean, I don't know, like for those of you who don't know, but so when I say I'm in self-recovery, I entered the self-recovery space through falling into addiction of alcohol in about 2018, and I couldn't understand how I got myself into this space. So I had to, one, stop drinking and do that part, right? But then the self-recovery part comes when me understanding, how did I get myself here? What practices and beliefs did I follow? Did I live under that made me think that my life was not worth living if I was not escaping it, right? Because I was in a hell that I didn't realize was in a hell, but I was in a hell. Going back a little bit, I would blame certain people, and usually you blame like the maternal figures in your life, because the truth is the maternal figures are the ones who are there who are present. So,
bam, let me stop.
So through my self-recovery, I was like, okay, this took like maybe 3-4 years. I'm done blaming folks for my trauma. Now I'm in the understanding part of saying like, well, and even a lot of times I would tell my mom like, well, you did this to me when I was a child. You know what she would say? They did it to me too. And again, that is the cycle of disregard, of hiding who we are. We're not able to be, and we store all our thoughts, all our words, all our communications, all our feelings in the body, and we take it out on the more vulnerable people of our community, which tends to be children and femmes, women, femmes, like if that woman, trans, that
all of it
of us. So as I started to again, forgive my mom, understood where she grew up. She's even older than her country, as her country has been established or independent colonizer. So I gave her grace, and then I had to think, like, as I was getting in tune to my ancestors, I had to think, what did they go through? Oh my gosh. And being of the Yoruba tribe, I know that the women in Nigeria, for most lineage, they were the breadwinners. They went to the market and worked. They negotiated. They used their words to negotiate. They used their words to solve problems in the community. But when they went home, did they have that same opportunity to speak, to say what was in their mind, to be the problem solvers that they innately are? So for me, spiritual communication is be saying whatever the hell I want reasonably, right? Making sure it's true. Is it kind? And not everything has to be kind, but for the most part, yes, is it kind and is it necessary? I do try to follow those lines, but spiritual communication is also me taking into account everything that I'm going through. I wasn't the first one to go through that, to do it. However, I'm the first one to speak about it, and I'm speaking about these things, everything, my addiction, communication, the problems I experienced as a child. I'm speaking on it, yes, for the future, but also for my ancestors, because I know they weren't afforded the opportunity to speak on certain things, and that's why I'm they're giving me, last thing I would say, oh, Katie didn't listen, she's so defiant. That was my ancestors. I mean, I'm not putting the blame on them. I'm not putting the blame on them, but I know a lot of my spunk, because I grew up 1 out of 5. So why was I the only one who was like, we all grew up in a mosque. We all grew up. I am me because I am the ancestors, specifically the maternal ancestors behind me. This is what you get when you don't control someone from my lineage, a woman from my lineage.
Yeah, oh, yes. Oof. All the words. When you were talking about like the adults you were seeing weren't a representation of the adult that you wanted to be when you grew up, hit so hard because I noticed that too as a child, and I couldn't put my finger on like what it was, but something just felt off. Like I was like, you don't seem happy. There's a part of yourself that's missing, it feels like. And it feels like you're going through the motions for the sake of something that isn't serving you. And I didn't have words for it. And then as I grew up, I learned about self-abandonment. And I was like, that is what it is. You have been forced and agreed to in so many ways to abandon parts of yourself. And now you're demanding and teaching me and other children to abandon ourselves. And along with that abandoning and like asking us to be more docile, more agreeable, it's also asking us to not have self accountability.
That part.
Mm. Yeah, so that hit. Thank you. Okay, let's backtrack a little bit. We were like we like dove in the deep. Okay, could you tell us a little bit about the kind of conflict care work you do, um, and like how you came into this work?
Okay, so the kind of work that I do now, like, yes, I do like contracts, and when it comes to communications, so if there's like a breakdown of communication between two people or businesses, I do partake in that type of communicate. And to me, it is communication work, because so I do have a mediation firm, Community Act, and it's basically teaching folks in our community how to interact and talk with one another and how to handle conflict. I graduated law school in 2018, and as soon as you would have thought that everything was like roses and gravy. I got my first, a beautiful apartment right on the waterfront in New York. My dream car. I had a job. At that time, I didn't know if I passed the bar, but my grades were good. I ended up passing the bar on the first try. So you would have thought that like life would have been just so amazing, but it wasn't, and I was miserable. Didn't understand why, but that's towards the self recovery journey that I was telling you about before. But sticking on like the communication work I did. So while I was working in the firms and the, I guess, nonprofit organizations, it just felt very daunting. It felt daunting and humiliating for two reasons. It felt like we were solving folks who look like us, Black folks, their problems, and then like sending them out into the world until they occurred a similar problem and then come back to us. And generally, while they were working with us, they didn't really understand like the court lingo, how to like maneuver the court system. It just felt very disempowering, excuse me. And the last time that I worked in like a professional legal setting, I was working downtown Brooklyn in the courthouses down there. And again, seeing Black folks, people of color, come before the judge, and now they don't have attorneys, so they're trying to mediate or handle this problem on their own in front of the judge. I'll hear the judge would be like, "That's not admissible." Do you think they know that that's not admissible? Do they go to law school? Can you give them more context to why that's not admissible? And I would just be there, and I'll be honest. I don't know if like why I was feeling embarrassed. I mean, it was embarrassing, and not on the party's part, but I felt a bit of like, I don't know if it was guilt, shame. I know it was embarrassment. The whole thing made me feel so uncomfortable, and I'm just a spectator in the back waiting for my case to be heard. I can only imagine what they are feeling standing up before this judge and constantly being told, "That's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong." So after my last, I guess, contract or like firm, or what do you call it? Like 9 to 5 legal job. That's when I'm like, what is the word I'm looking for? That's when I decided to, go into recovery, deal with my issues with alcohol. And then when I came out of it, I said, what am I going to do? So, I do have a nonprofit, Sober Black Girls Club. So maybe like 4 or 5 years into my recovery, I felt like, I thought I didn't want to, practice into the legal sector anymore. But then I was like, oh no, I do. I am a problem solver. I like solutions. I like helping people, but I don't want to go back to that setting. I don't want to go back to the setting of where we are in court with, and New York is one of the most diverse places you can be in. But when you're in the court system, it's still the same white man. And there are Black judges, don't get me wrong, but the majority of what I was in front of and what I saw was it just didn't sit right. And I didn't want to work in a firm anymore. I just didn't want to be in that setting anymore. So I was thinking about like, what it is that I can do, and mediation came in mind. However, I did do some mediation as an attorney for certain firms, but it wasn't the type of mediation that it was more of, you say what you think, the other party say what they think, and then I create this solution. I felt like, especially in this time of age, we should be helping the parties, the participants, create the solutions for themselves. We should be navigating and helping them see what happened, what could have been done better, and where do we go from here? And not every situation is equal. For example, right now, again, I'm doing like contracts between these two businesses that are helping them mediate. They don't want to go to court, which is fine. I'm helping them. But for me, it's the cases of family members, of friends, of neighbors. Those are the cases that I get that really are, this is why I'm doing this. This is why I created Community Act. How can we act in community even when there's a conflict, even when there's a disagreement? How can we recognize? How can we be accountable? How can we recognize what went wrong, and is this relationship worth saving and worth going right for? Some are not. Some are just like, you know what? You guys have been best friends for a while because you guys are in proximity with each other. It doesn't look like you guys share the same values at all. That's what I want Community Act to embody. And that's why I created Community Act. So for me, Community Act is this community-based mediation practice where folks learn to solve conflict or navigate conflict, create solutions where they don't have to feel like they're abandoning themselves, because the traditional legal system and traditional mediation practices are saying you're wrong and I'm right. That's not real life. That's not real life at all. A lot of times we see situations where maybe a party has overreacted, right, about something, and then when you get into it, you'll hear about 10,000 things that happened before this person overreacted. And that, I think, is very common in the Black and people of color community because we're afraid to communicate. I think that Black folks, especially, and I'm saying this as a person who works with a lot of Black women, through my nonprofit, the Blacklist Club, constantly hearing, I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to get in trouble, or I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to look like angry Black women, or I didn't want to say something because of this and that. And it all, we can all, for the most part, and I don't want to say all of us, but some of us, most of us, can look back to when we were kids and we were constantly told to be quiet, stop talking. When you go into store, don't touch anything. You don't want to be seen or heard. And our parents or the adults around us might have been telling us this because of our protection. They don't want white people to even notice us, leave us the hell alone. But we also have to see and understand how that has contributed to our lack of willingness to be in community. And when I mean be in community, resolve conflict. Because in any community, there's going to be some type of conflict. Mm-hmm. So that's what encouraged me to create Community Act, because I think to live a full life, we have to be free of feeling like if we say what we're feeling, or if we say a problem that we have, then we're going to be abandoned, or mm-hmm. we're going to be ostracized, or there's going to be this big blow up. And I'm here to tell people it doesn't have to be like that. It can. You can't control anyone but yourself. But I feel like if you understand what is it that you want to say, why is it you want to say it, and if you understand certain methods, for example, if I'm hot about something and I want to have a conversation with you and solve this problem we have, maybe today might not be the good day to do it. And I think sometimes, like a lot of clients that I've had in the past, they feel like, well, if they say they don't want to have this conversation today, it might look like they're scary. But so what? You're keeping you in mind. Forget this. Forget the other party. You're hot. You have the self-awareness to understand you're hot. You're not in a space right now where you can hear anyone. By you providing you the space that you probably was never afforded in the past. You did something wrong. Probably the adults in your life wanted to talk about it right then and there. You're the adult now. You get to control what you speak, how you speak, and how you maneuver certain predicaments. So to you, in your brain, you're saying it looks like you're scary. To me, I'm saying, oh, this person cares about our relationship. They don't want to say anything out of anger, and they want to wait until they're cooled down. Mm-hmm. So that's, hopefully I've explained why I created Community Act. I created Community Act to shift the way not only we handle conflict, but also the way we communicate with each other.
Absolutely. No, you explained that really well. And I think that we need to have more conversations, especially within the Black community, about this expectation that folks have around Black femmes and thems, like showing up for other people. Like they expect us to stand up for everyone else, but they get quite upset when we stand up for ourselves, when we set boundaries that relate to ourselves. Then there's a problem. Then we're seen as the angry Black woman, or we have an attitude, or we're not being cooperative. And I currently in this moment, I'm quite pissed about it. And vocal about it. But I think that speaks to, again, how we show up in conflict. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for sharing more about your work. And I actually have my next question is based on when people ask what I do and I tell them I do conflict care work, either people's eyes glaze over and they seem hesitant to ask more questions, or they're really curious. Mm-hmm. And they hint to me or tell me on the side that they're experiencing conflict at work or in other places, and they don't know how to handle it. So I'm curious, how do you share this work on the day-to-day with people who might not understand what it is?
So I'll be very honest with you. Now I don't think I'm doing a great job as in like marketing. There's levels to everything. So
Yes.
I will say I'm not doing the best job when it comes to spreading the message to folks who are outside of my community or who hear about me from mouth to mouth. I think because again, a lot of our community doesn't know that this work exists and it can be provided. The things that I could be doing, for example, like we've had legacy fest coming up, and it's to commemorate, I believe, the work of the folks and on Black Wall Street who were violently killed and violently erased from the Tulsa massacre. We just had May Fest, and we have all these festivals right now, especially in this. I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so we have so many festivals. And truthfully, what I should be doing is getting a booth, sitting my butt down, and explaining to people how, like, what is Community Act, what we do. I think that for me, what I know I should be doing, and what I hope to be doing more in the future. But because I am a lawyer, people do come to me and they like tell me their problems, and they never expect the angle that I come out of what. They probably what can I do? Should I take it to court? I'm like, no, we can have a conversation, and that's where when it comes to like conflict work, I always start with like the communication, because a lot of the conflict that I hear, it's just if someone would have said something, even if it was in a text, even if you were too scared to say it in person, even if it was in an email, if someone would have said something, I don't think you would have been here. But because a lot of the communication, the conflict that I hear, and I think it kind of has to us being Black folks and being scared to even initiate the conflict. So if we go from 0 to 100 real quick, and I'm like, girl, there was 10, there was 20, there was 30 before this conflict got to 100. Yeah. So I do, when folks do come to me for work, like they're like, hey, I need this help. I'm like, well, did you try sending your landlord a letter basically stating everything that's going on? No. But then you want to go to court? She doesn't even have any notice of anything that you're saying. And even if she does, she can literally say that you're lying. So why don't we document, create a letter for your landlord? Let's start there. Let's just start there. Communication. Child, let's start there. So that's usually how I navigate people towards my work. But like I said, there's more I should be doing to be informing the community about the benefits of conflict work, like what your community work that you're doing, and also community mediation, and how beneficial it can be, not for only this current problem, but to help you prevent future problems. Like now you know how to navigate and the angle to go towards this issue.
Yeah, and honestly, I think that's like the fact that you don't market a lot, but folks are still finding you through the other work you do, or like that they know that you're a lawyer, I think speaks to the fact that sometimes we don't need to market this work per se, but just having day-to-day conversations that invites it in is like where it's at. Because honestly, like the folks that have come to me to do conflict care work, it's been through word of mouth. It hasn't been because they like looked me up on the Googles.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. So I think that there's something to be said for that. And also I just want to uplift something, because yes, it's important to be having to like build up our skills for handling conflict, but you also mentioned something around like having documentation. Ooh, I have had to like, y'all document your shit. Like have documents, because at the end of the day, especially if you are BIPOC, if you are queer, trans, intersex, like folks out here wilding. So have your documentation, because if it does get to that point where you need to like protect yourself legally, even though the legal system doesn't see it for us, like at least you have documentation. Like please document everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think like out of my practice let's say the last 2 years of being in this practice, I will say that I think I have a very optimistic more sunflower view of people, and let's blame that on my Leo stellium in my first house. I do think it kind of clouds like how I see, like in my head, like we can all really learn how to live in community. We can
Oh, absolutely.
all really, nothing is beyond resolution or resolve in my head. I have to ground myself in understanding that that's not the reality. And even in my life, there's something like that's just not the reality for a lot of people right now in this moment. So this is where the lawyer in me comes in. Yes, just have documentations. Even though we want to really believe that the party on the other side does want this to resolve, wants to be just, want to be fair, want to live in community. I understand. That's not how everyone, unfortunately, operates. Not with the same intention that you do. So yeah, have your documents. So when you have to pull out the receipts and be like, wait, what? I said this day, or and what I mean by I said this day. Yes, document everything, but also if you are having a in-person communication about a certain conflict or topic, I always tell people, again, this is another tip, to memorialize it in some type of writing. And this is how it could look like. Let's say if me and Goddess had a conversation, we were roommates, we had a conversation about taking out the trash. Hey Goddess, I want to thank you so much. And this is how you kill it with kindness. People, I'm thinking about people who be like, Katie, they don't understand me. I know what I'm doing, boo boo. Okay, I know what I'm doing. So people like sometimes they don't understand like how it can be so just like loose with certain things, and I'm not. I'm truly not. I'm just giving the person the benefit of the doubt. I also know what I'm doing. So this is a text that I would send if and I don't know. I said I hate using the person I'm talking with.
You can use me. I volunteer as you.
All right. So Goddess and I are roommates, and we had a conflict about a problem with who's taking out the trash. Goddess, thank you so much for speaking with me. I really appreciate your willingness to come up with a solution. I just want, so as we discussed earlier, I will be taking out the trash this day. You'll be taking the trash this day. I'm just so happy we were able to come up with the resolution. Now, let's say something happens down the line where you have to move out, and then I sue you for like early cancellation. And we go to court, and we're saying like we couldn't just live together in peace. It was just like garbage everywhere, blah 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 blah. I can show that we came up with a solution. We came up with a resolution. We tried to work it out. I didn't just or you didn't just, I forgot who was who, but you didn't, none of us just got up and left the apartment and abandoned the lease. However, because it was ongoing problems, this problem has not resolved itself even after we tried to talk about it, even after we came up with a plan. Now I'm leaving. So now you are kind of saved. And that's like, I said court, scratch that. Even if you came to mediation, if you came before me, what work did you guys do beforehand? Like what work? I see it. Ask the party, what problems or what restraints did you have with this solution? Like why wasn't you able to follow up through on it? And generally conversations are usually like when you get back down to the nitty gritty about certain conversations, you'll find out that someone is really depressed and it's really interacting and impacting their daily functions. And that can lead to us breaking the lease, but with less animosity and more compassion. Like, okay, yes, this is not going to work because you're clearly going through this. Or I forgot who was who in this situation, but one of us is clearly going through something where we're unable to resolve this trash situation. There's trash everywhere. I cannot live like this. But now I'm not angry with you. I understand. So if I see you in the street, I'm gonna say, "Hey, girl." But
yeah, exactly. And I think that like the sunflower tint or like I like that is important to have. Like I have hope that we can all come to a place of resolving conflict without the legal system. And on it, like documenting things isn't just about like in case it does get to the court or in case it does get to mediation. It also helps us track what we were saying. Like like I need something, like I'm ADHD. So I need something to come back to make sure that like when I'm feeling a certain kind of way, when I'm feeling hurt or disrespected, that I can come back to this and be like, well, what did we agree on? And have those things been happening? so that I can also come with a lot of love and compassion when I do need to bring things up with folks. So I like, yes, the example was on point. I appreciated that example. Um, okay, I'm gonna try to fit this in stuff. No, I'm like, wait, let me get these questions.
I go on tangents. I think you
No,
told me
it was
this
no, this is all necessary. Like, I am appreciating this conversation.
All right.
So do you find that you have to distinguish harm from conflict when you do mediation? And like, do those ever intersect? I love the
Yes.
look on your face right now. Yeah, okay.
But I say that to say that doesn't mean I have the correct practice to answer to that. But I have had couples or ex couples come before me where there's clearly violence
Mm-hmm.
in the situation, and I don't think that I have enough experience handling said type of conflict because it's harm, it's violence,
Yeah.
it's physical, and I think that I don't want to say some harms are less or more um important or serious than the other, but I haven't had a case, I would say, that has come before me where, like, yeah, there was manipulation and lying, which is also harm.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the solutions was to talk about the ways that this action manifests in manipulation and in harm, how the person who's being targeted or on the end of receiving this harm can spot it and can take appropriate actions to just not be in this facility anymore. You say you still want to be in a relationship or community with this person now, but I also, it's important that we talk about how these things, even though they're not physical, it's still harm. Like like, as a mediator, I give my insight, but I don't say, I'm saying now because we're talking on this podcast, but I don't say like, oh girl, he's manipulating you. He's a liar. He's this and that. But I'm saying, like, in terms of going through the facts and what has happened and giving my insight and asking questions, I try to like lead them to understand that this is actually violence, and this is, you're saying that things are okay because no one has hit you, but actually this is not that. Like, this is still violent. Like, this is still harmful, and this is still going to impact the other people, the other members in your home. And for me, in situations like that, it's important that I let you see it for yourself. I'm not a therapist. And also, I know that people don't necessarily like to be told. They need to be shown. Like, my job to show you how this is impacting you in ways that you probably are not seeing it now, but it's going to come out sooner or later. And I know it is impacting the other members in the house. So stuff like that, I think that, cases like that, I think I am able to navigate. I struggle when the harm is physical.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to community mediation, I do not try. And again, this is how it's different from like 9-to-5 mediation. I'm not going to remove the humanity out of the situation. I know folks don't want us to talk about the humanity. They don't want us to talk about like emotions and feelings. No, because we are people and we operate with emotions, with feelings, with that. So I'm not going to remove it. I understand why white supremacy tells us, because it's easier for you to continue harming us if I take out the emotions. When people say things to the effect, and I know I'm going a little off, but when people say things like, you don't have to act with emotions. Fuck you. Yes, like, what do you mean? You literally just harmed me, and you're telling me, what do they say? I haven't heard it in a while because I've totally removed myself. If anyone has ever harmed me, and then they say, well, you didn't have to react like that. You didn't have to do what you did.
Tone checking.
Yeah, or like, you're too sensitive. Yes, I'm sensitive. I'm a Cancer. Hell yeah. What? And you telling me not to act with emotions, it's to protect you, not to allow me to release myself of the harm that has been done to me. So anyways, going back to the original question, I do struggle when it comes to physical harm or violence. And I've had cases where I have said that I'm not equipped to handle this. I'm just not. I think I would need more. And I'm like, and again, the work that we're doing is like, where do you go for training? I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Like where do you go for someone to tell you this? And I have, however, even though I said I'm not able to mediate this between you two, I do want to speak with you. And then I would take the person who I feel like is being harmed, and I would talk with them and give them the actions, or trying to persuade them to take certain steps, certain actions. So that's a good point, because yeah, when it comes to physical harm, I'm pretty sure if it was like a girl fight, child, I've been in a lot of them. Yeah, we can talk about that. That's fine. Growing up as a kid, let me say something. When I tell you how this practice has come from experience. As a child,
Yes.
I was always like, not, I don't say always, but like I said, my behavioral folder was thick, okay? Like it was thick, because I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know. I was mimicking what I saw, you know, with the adults around me. When they felt wronged, or they felt like I did something wrong, they hit me. So I felt like it was appropriate to, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been, you know, it's been like maybe 10, 12 years. Well, yeah, I'm gonna say 10 years since I've gotten into fight. And when I say that in talks and conversation, people laugh, but I'm like, for me, you don't know how big of a deal that is, because I'm so used to. You said what?
Mm.
And now it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, and I know I'm switching gears. But let me just end it with this.
No. Keep going.
But I remember the epiphany that I had. The epiphany I had was, you know, I was complaining about the violence in my community in New York, and just saying like, I hate living here, blah 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 blah. And I was reading something, and I think it was from Bell Hooks. I was reading, and it made me think about like how, oh wow, when I hit people, I'm also contributing to violence. Yeah, I'm not using guns. Yeah, I'm not like trying to kill anyone. I'm just trying to make a point, and how that also contributes to the violence and the safety that people feel in this community. So that was an eye opener. How even though I don't see myself as like a murderer or a burglar or a robber, I'm still contributing, even if it's on a micro level, to the level of safety that people feel in this community. And that's when I was like, okay, you know, no more fighting, um, walk away, handle it another day, send in, if you can't, if I'm still hot in that moment, send a text instead of, you know, speaking face to face, have someone proofread it. There's all these techniques that we can use to resolve conflict. So not all harm. I think like if it comes to friends, I have a lot of insight, and I do. Like I'm talking from experience as a person who used to fight, who no longer fights. I get it. I get not liking to be disrespected. I get not liking to be bullied. I get people, you know, seeing you one way but not knowing you got hands. Like, yeah, I laugh a lot, but I also know how to move my hands fast. Like, what do you like? What you know? I get being on the side of, and people think that, you know, victims of bullying look a certain type of way, and it's like, no, it's like I get it, and I can give insight of to people on a different end of the spectrum who have used physical violence to either defend themselves or make a point or let people know that they're not to be picked with. I get it. So that type of harm, I can navigate. I can give insight on. I can provide tips on like what to do. But I think when it comes to domestic harm, I'm a little like, I can't mediate this, but can we talk, and can I have a session with you and I can tell you like what I feel you should do.
Absolutely. Yeah, intimate partner violence is something that I've been leaning more and more into over the last couple of years. Um, and it still feel like there's just still so much that we just don't know how to do. It's like in the moment, we got to figure out like in the moment. But I want to go back to what you were saying around like, how does my way of defending myself or like co- course correcting in a way, like how does that also like reverberate out into like community safety overall and like the sense of community safety. And I think that is so important for us to ask of like how it like you might be valid, like that person may need to have been laid out, but like how is it contributing to community safety overall? Is a question that I will be asking myself more often. Um, and I think for me, like conflict and harm like play off of each other. I think that when we're in conflict, because of how we're handling it, we can cause more harm. And I think for me, harm has to do with like plays on power. Like
Mm,
if you are trying to wield power over another person or situation, there's probably some harm happening there. But I don't think they're like completely like conflict and harm are completely separate from each other. And at least in my experience, like it's not black and white, and there's gonna be both in a situation. There's gonna be both in a situation. And sometimes, like we talked about before, you can see something as conflict when another person will see that as harm. And that could be about the way in which we're thinking about what's normal
yes.
and what we deserve.
Can you give an example for that? Because that was deep, and I'm like, I kind of want to hear it.
Oh, I'm thinking of, I'm trying to like
No, I get it.
make
Yeah.
sure that this is not like super specific to any okay. I think that maybe this applies. So you were talking about like getting physically punished as like a child, and I think that that's something that we in the Black community grapple with a lot. And if you were spanked as a child, it might have been talked about in more of like a conflict way, in that like this is a way for me like to express to you a boundary or to like teach you like what is acceptable. And that could kind of be in like the realm of like conflict, you know,
Yeah.
like I'm having trouble with my kid, like we're not getting along, I have to like spank them, you know, and they keep running away or something like that. That kind of gets like put into the conflict bucket. But like when you look at the history of where spanking came from and its roots to slavery and power over people, I'm gonna put that in the harm bucket. That is harm. And that this is actually something that comes up for me in some of the work I do around conflict care is like folks are seeing it as like this is a way of like resolving a situation or be bringing like order to a situation by hitting someone. And I'm like, is it though? Are you bringing order? Like, or are you trying to like gain power through physical pain? So I think that's one of the ways. Like, I feel like there were other examples I could give, but that was like the first one that like kind of came to mind.
And no, that's spot on, and I totally, totally agree. I guess what I'm thinking now, my mind was going two places, but yes, I absolutely agree. And I remember reading something again, what came with the whole hitting, right, and and physical harm. Oh, spanking, right? Yeah, it did derive from enslavement. Like, where
Mhm.
do you think people in Nigeria were not just hitting each other? That's not how they resolved conflict pre-slavery. They had guidelines, they had councils, they had meetings to talk about how someone was going to be like punished. People weren't just taking belts and like beating each other with it, or beating like children with it when they did something wrong.
Mhm.
And I remember like I had to give my dad specifically grace. This was at the point where I was like understanding. I think I was reading something by Bell Hooks. Bell Hooks, I'm telling you, she changed my life.
I know
She
about
just
hooks,
the way
always.
she just changed the way I saw things. So I remember in a book I was reading. I don't know if it was all about, not all about love, or the woman feminism. I can't remember which book it was, but she said how she gave an example or just like a narrative about how our parents, you know, they would go out in the white world, work for a boss who didn't respect them, you know, the people on top of them, some of them just looking down to them, and you could feel the weight of the power that their superiors, even their white coworkers, had over them. Like they looked down on them, and that's when people say, "I don't." You know, what does slavery have to do with this? I'm like, are you out of your mind? Do you think our people were just inherently like violent? They're not. They learned white people's ways, and I shouldn't say maybe white people. Maybe I should take that back and say white supremacist ways. They learned white supremacy ways. Okay, so our parents went out in the world, didn't feel like they felt the degree of power structure or the lack of between them and their coworkers and boss. And when they came home to feel that power, who are they going to feel it? Who are they going to be able to feel that power from? The kids in the house, the woman in the house. It gave them a sense of them feeling like they were powerful, that they meant something. And even though it was very indirected, it was very wrong, like it was misguided. If you want to feel power, focus it on yourself. That's what I have a top point of my recovery is when I am feeling uncontrollable, when I'm feeling like I don't matter or I don't have any like will in this world, like nothing I'm doing is making a difference. Yeah, it can be easy. I used to do this all the time. Tell myself, Amira, go clean your room. Do that. And I had to ask myself, why am I focusing on them? I'm focusing on them to put this lack that I'm feeling on something, to extract it out of something, and it's usually to give orders. Once I read that from Bell Hooks, I literally applied that to like my parents, specifically my father, and then I had to realize how I do that in my relationships. How when there's something I'm feeling a lack of something inside, how I try to rid that lack by telling other people what to do, by bossing other people around. Why don't I focus on myself? There's a lot of things I can be doing, focusing, turning inward, that thing to myself. So when you talked about like harming conflict, I totally agree. And a lot of conflict, I do feel like can be resolved without harm. I feel like we just have to know. We have to understand our intention. What is the intention of what's my intention in resolving this harm or navigating towards it? If it's for you to feel better, I would say just take a step back. But if it's to actually understand each other and navigate this conflict, then yes, I do feel like it can be done without at least physical harm, and hopefully like mental emotional harm. You can navigate it in ways where you're not letting the other side or the other party feel like they don't matter or that you are superior to them in one way or another. And the last thing I do want to say about that particularly is I realized, like, so for me, the whole less fighting thing became easier once I realized that the people I was around and the people who I was actually fighting, we were meant to be in community anyways. But I think like growing up, you feel like you have to constantly be in community with certain people. And I always tell people, if you are constantly fighting with someone, because that's who the fights were with. They weren't like with like randoms. I hardly ever had fights with a random person. Don't get me wrong. If you're in a park and a racist is talking smack, I'm not gonna tell you to smack them on this podcast, but girl, you know what I mean.
Do what you gotta do in that moment. Let's be like think about like what might happen, but you protect yourself.
Yeah, let's be very real. I ain't talking about them. You do, you boo. I'm talking about your like neighbors, your cousins, people who you are in community with. If y'all are having multiple fights all the time, maybe y'all either come to me, let's work this out. But even if mediation, that we reach the conclusion that y'all are just not compatible, you do not need to be in community with each other, then that's what it is, and it's okay. A lot of our relationships, especially growing up, have been built on proximity, and that itself causes a lot of conflict because when we're growing into two different people However, we keep on feeling like we gotta always come back because it's like, I knew since I was 7, we cousins. That doesn't work. Sometimes if you want peace, you have to understand that you are my cousin and I do love you, but this is not going to work because we're operating on 2 different value systems. And that's why there's always a physical fight at the end of every time we get together. Therefore, I have to be an adult and just pull myself away. And once I started to realize that, I don't have to actually be near this person, there was really no need to fight. There wasn't.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that leads into like right relationship, and like right relationship is about gauging what is comfortable and healthy, like what's a comfortable and healthy relationship dynamic to another person. And like there's some folks that like maybe my right relationship isn't like with them isn't them coming over to a gathering I'm having, but it is like we're in the same like organizing circle, but we're doing different projects within that circle. Maybe my right relationship with another person is them being a deep and intimate friend. Like it's okay to have different kinds of relationship dynamics with folks, and setting that like based off of how that person like how you feel around that person and how you feel you're being treated by that person. That is okay. You do not have to be friends with everyone. You also like the relief I felt when I was listening to a speech, and I cannot remember the name of the philosopher. It'll come to me. But and he was like, you don't have to like everyone. Like that in itself is like not okay. Like that is a lie. Like why are you lying? And I was like, you mean I don't have to pretend to like such and such? I was like, oh, that makes me, and I can show more love for them now that I can admit that, oh, no, you ain't my cup of tea. But I know you're other people's cup of tea. So you can go over here, I'll go on over here. And we'll just, yeah, I think that that's okay. I truly do, because you definitely have a point there. There was so much more I wanted to say about what you said, but let me just go to the next question.
Wait, can I say one thing? Are you on a time crunch?
No. You go.
Yeah, and I feel like when you're changing your ways, when you're like, because this is the thing. I don't think everyone, like, if it wasn't for my addiction, I don't know how else I would have been acquainted or like introduced to bell hooks works. And I say that today because I went to school, I read. The institutions that I'm a part of, they're not going to introduce me to bell hooks. It was that when I was in such an adult place and trying to understand, like, what, I created this group where we talked about our addiction, and then someone in the group brought up bell hooks, and that's when we started reading her first book, Black Woman in Self-Recovery, Sisters of the Yam, Black Woman in Self-Recovery. So that's the first bell hooks book I ever read. And I remember like reading things, and I just felt so much like grace to myself, and I wanted to extend that to people in my family. I'm like, maybe they don't know that this is what we're operating under. Maybe they don't understand that like when we mistreat each other, we're doing it to balance out this power dynamic, or to create a power dynamic, not even balance it out. It's really to create it, and how like this is just a non-ending cycle. How like everyone is always fighting each other. Sometimes this one person is like the villain. Sometimes this person plays the role as a hero when it comes to this child, and it's just like all these dynamics that we're playing to each other. It's really structured, and it's actually batshit crazy. And in my head, I'm thinking maybe they don't know about this. Like, but now that I want them to know that this is what it is, And I remember, telling people in my family about this, and me operating a different way. Me, hey, tell your cousin to do this. I'm like, no, I'm not going to tell them to do this because, I don't have any business telling them. And they need to if they want to do it, if they ask me for my advice, I will. But because, again, I've already been on the opposite or such a far right side of the spectrum of like this power dynamic that I didn't know I was playing into. Now I kind of just need to chill out. Like, I don't want to tell anyone anything. Like, I want to just heal myself and figure out and navigate this new way of living. Mm-hmm. So I remember like telling, again, family members about this thing, and none of them were interested. None of them were interested. And it hit me, that some of them, they want this power dynamic. It's the only way that they feel that they can feel powerful or have some importance. Mm-hmm. And once I realized that they weren't interested in anything I was like trying to show them, hey, read this book. Oh, hey, look at what this person, like, doesn't this like make sense to like all the stuff that we've been going through? Once I realized like, oh, they don't want to change this, I was like, oh, bye. Like, bye. Because there's more to me than fighting all the time. There's more to me than having arguments all the time, which I felt like was always happening in our like the larger family context. Someone was always fighting someone, and it made no sense. And here I am thinking this is going to change everything, but y'all like to fight each other. Y'all want to be in conflict, not me. So I say that to say that there might and probably will likely be times where you recognize a fault, you recognize an issue, you take accountability, and you, again, think that maybe if you explain to people, like, this is what we've been doing and this is how we can stop this, sometimes your findings are not going to matter to the person you're explaining them to. And that is going to create a space where it says, oh, I do love you, but you're not for me. Again, I want to put some, after your share, I want to put some context on what I was saying. I'm operating on different values now. And if you cannot operate on those values, or you're operating on the old values that made us constantly, fighting and arguing with each other, I have no choice but to leave. I will be crazy. And now I will be in a situation where I'm defenseless because now I know I don't want to fight. Now I know I don't want to really put my hands on anyone. But you don't have that same reservation. So now I'm exposed to your harm, to your mental harm, your emotional harm, and your physical harm. Now I got to go. So again, that's what I was saying. Like, when you remove yourself from certain people who you really feel like a lot of your arguments and conflict and fights, it really dissipates. Because once they're gone, and now you're operating with people who share your values, you'll realize, like, oh, there's not a lot to fight or argue. There's nothing to fight or argue about. Oh, I can't. I've had people come to me and be like, Katie, I have been their most safest relationship. I had like one person tell me, I had one person tell me that maybe a year ago. And it made me feel so good because it made me realize that she feels safe. She knows that if she tells me, because that's what basically, she wanted to tell me something. She didn't know how I was going to react. She didn't know if I was not going to be her friend anymore. And it wasn't even something like extremely dynamic where I'd be like, I don't want to be your friend. I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm going to take note of that. I apologize, and I'm not going to do that next time. I'm not going to do that next time. I'm going to take note of it. And she just broke down and started crying. And I was like, why are you crying? And she was just like, because I thought we were going to have an argument, like, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, no. I didn't know I was doing that, but I acknowledge what you're saying, and I am going to be more conscious of me doing the thing that you're telling me I'm doing. Even if I didn't at that point think I was doing it, I have to admit I wasn't really taking note of it. I wasn't really paying attention if I was doing it. Now I am going to pay attention. I'm going to, see, like, be more conscious of my actions. So that was a long ramble, but I just did want to, put that out there. I did. Okay. I put that out there.
Ooh, okay. I think that what you said speaks to this next question. So if you have more to expound on, dope. If you don't, it's okay. But what is something you are learning about your own life when it comes to conflict as you do this work?
I'll say this. Because it's because I have Jupiter, Venus, rising, Mercury, Mars, all in Leo, my first house. I can be so willing to be like, oh, it's okay. Oh, I'm doing that. I apologize. And I'm just being more I'm always willing to what's the word? Just to I don't want to say wave the right flag, but I think I'm I have, for the most part, always just been like willing to, of
Meet
course,
people where they're at, kind of.
meet people where they are, apologize, even if I don't feel like I'm doing anything wrong. It's just like, okay, I can just apologize and just not do it again. Like, it's not a big deal. But I think that as I am working with other people and working with them, mediate their conflict, I'm realizing that I can have standards and just standards, honestly, and how I want to and who I want to interact, even when they're not causing me action. Like you said, you don't have to like everyone. And I'm realizing that, like, I can actually. I'm trying. Let me come up with an example. I'm just realizing that I can have standards. It's so basic to be like, I could just say no, or I can be like, oh, I don't like this person, or I can be like, this person's not my cup of tea, and it be that. It's not actual conflict. It's just me acknowledging that, like, this is not for me. This opportunity is not for me. Or I simply, and I always have to reason myself. It could just be I simply just don't want to do this. I simply don't want to do this. No. So I'm realizing now how sometimes disingenuous I am to myself, because in my head initially it feels like yes, it feels like great, it feels like you're an amazing person. Let's be best friends. And then after time, after time has sunk in, and I'm thinking, like, why does my body feel so conflicted with this decision I made? It's because I didn't take a moment to sit down and really think. Yes, everything on the face is always going to be sunflowers for me. I have to sit down and really think out the nuance, like the seed. I have to pick out the seeds in the sunflower before I'm able to truly create my opinion or decision on something. So that's something that I'm learning in terms of, like, how I handle conflict. I don't always have to concede to something. I don't always have to be the person to extend the olive branch, especially if I'm feeling my body. I don't want to, or my body is saying no. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Listen to the body. It knows something. I'm not saying this person is evil. I'm not saying this person is like this, but it's like, this person is probably just not for me, and that's fine. Listen to the body.
This reminds me of something that I just kind of figured out recently, is like, when I don't like someone, but I'm still trying to be in community, like in relationship with them, like direct relationship with them, I will nitpick all the things and all the interactions that I did not like with that person. And like, it kind of creates this like monster in my head of this person. And it's like, bruh, like, you can just be like, I don't like this person. Like, I don't feel good when I'm around them. And that doesn't make them a monster. It just means I don't like them. And so I can give myself permission not to come up with more reasons not to like them, and create an enemy out of someone that doesn't need to be an enemy. They can just be someone that I don't like. Because now I'm making it bigger, like I'm making like a mountain out of molehill when I'm just like, I don't actually like you.
Yes. Let me say something. Can I share one story? Actually, can I share something?
Go up. Yes.
Because I'm big. Like, I don't know what I'm gonna blame it on mycelium. So I'm big in, like, I'm big in all my communities, right? For the most part, I am. And then I have Silver Black Girls Club, which has just expanded my community to, like, even have Silver Black Girls Club sisters in France and South Africa. So great, right? Like, great. But I think it's okay to be on it. I remember a couple of years ago, I met this person who, they had been following me, SBGC and Silver Black Club. This is when I was, like, on the Red Table Talk, which was when I was doing, like, a lot of TV shows about this club, about my own journey. And yeah, like, I get it, right? And I remember hanging out with this person, and I felt like every time we hung out, like, she just had something to, like, say to me, like, Katie, you did this, you did that. And this is actually connected to that person I was telling you over in the beginning about.
Okay.
Just like 10 minutes ago, 11, 12 minutes ago. And
Full circle.
Full circle, yeah, it intertwines. And remember the first time she said, I just apologized. She's like crying, like she felt like she she's never had a relationship where she could just tell someone. I'm like, no, like, it's fine. And I feel like me saying that, because the truth is, it is fine. If I do something, just tell me and I'll apologize, and I'll make sure to, like, be conscious that I'm not doing it, right? To me, that's just a normal response. If someone that you're trying to get to know or you like, that's a normal response. But baby girl, if we're hanging out every time we hang out, you have a problem with something I'm doing, at this point, we don't need to be friends. It's okay for you just to, in your head, say you do not like me. Like that, I think you have to like me because you see me with other people, but you truly don't. You don't have to like me. You clearly, I hang out with a lot of people. They don't like come to me after every hangout and tell me I'm doing something wrong. And the fact that you're doing this and you won't make the decision for yourself, I think I have to tell you, like, I don't think you like me, which is okay. You do not. You something about me. It doesn't vibe with you.
Yeah,
it's fine. We just don't have to be friends. We don't have to be enemies, but we don't have to be friends. So I just love how you said that, because I feel like more, especially us as Black women, especially I think also when we see other Black women, and even though there's a lot of like trauma Black women to Black women that I hear a lot in our clubs, and I respect, I get it, I totally get it, but I still don't feel like that should stop one from being honest with their feelings and and truly like what they're feeling, what their body is telling them. Like, it's okay. You don't have to like everyone. And me personally, please let me know you don't like me, because I'm a yapper. I be talking so much. I be just telling, like, I just be like, but if I know that, okay, like, oh, wait, we're not on the same page, then I just be, just acquaintances. Hey, bye. So I think it's so honest. Not only are you doing yourself a favor by being honest with yourself, but you're also doing the other person, service by letting them know where you stand, so they won't feel like manipulated or tricked into feeling like they can be transparent and vulnerable with someone who doesn't feel the same way.
Absolutely. And I think there's also, okay, so another thing I'm figuring out is like, I would get resentful or upset when someone I didn't particularly like was in their muchness and not realizing that like they were not my cup of tea, but everyone else would like them. And I'm just like, is it me? Like, your muchness is muching in a way that like I want to run to the opposite end of this world. I'm like, why? Like, it was like I was being triggered, like big T triggered. And I was like, bro, what is this? And I think what I learned is that I was resentful because they were simply being themselves. And I wasn't giving myself full permission to be myself. So I'm learning how to give myself full permission to be myself, which I've been doing for years. But I'm adding on the addition of like not trying to cater or like gauge who I am based off of like making other people comfortable in this very particular kind of way. And so like, for example, like I like the conflict care work we do, like it has opened my eyes up to a lot of things that like just are no longer my vibe. Like I'm no, I will not tolerate that in a relationship. Yeah. And so there are certain people like that I have lifelong friends. I'm always gonna love them. Like we always gonna be friends. But we've had to like redecide like how intimate we can be, because I'm just like, there are certain things that like I'm learning about that you don't want to learn about or are struggling with, and that's fine. But it does affect the quality of a relationship, because now I'm putting all these tools into our relationship and you are not, and now I'm like mothering you in a way or overtaking up too much of the like responsibility in this, which is not how those tools are meant to be used. So I will not be doing that. And I'm also more careful with like who like you were saying, like I might be really excited about meeting another person and be like, yes, surface level, we get along. And then get a little bit into the more inside relationship. I was like, oh, we are operating completely differently. So I'm learning how to be unapologetic about that and like leaving sooner rather than later while also like having self accountability on like how I'm viewing this person. Because if I'm making a monster out of someone that's just like not my cup of tea and having resentment for them, like there's something within myself that is not being met that like maybe I should just bring into the space a bit more. And that's not to say like it's my fault.
Yeah.
It's like the situation, but like I just no more. No, I'm not doing it no more.
This is an episode on conflict resolution, but folks have to understand, especially as Black people, especially as Black femmes, women, girls, especially as us, we have to understand that like sometimes there is no conflict. You just don't like this person, but you're operating in community, daily community. You have too many interactions with this person that you do not need to have, that now there is conflict building. Meanwhile, you could have just listened to your body, yourself, and have stayed, I don't want to say far away, but limit your interactions with this person.
I completely agree.
So this has to be talked about. We have to know how to listen to our body, to understand what you just talked us through. We all need to be having these conversations with ourselves, and probably daily, because we're not going to unlearn people pleasing and a lot of the tendencies we were raised on. We're not going to unlearn them in like a year or two. So it's okay to have these conversations, to assess, and hopefully at the end of like the assessment, you get to the conclusion where like you're not a bad person for not liking someone. You're also not a bad person for not understanding why other people like this person and not. You're just navigating and trying to understand what is going on with you, and what is going on with the space that's around you. And that is okay. It's okay to assess. As long as you're keeping it within yourself, and what I mean with yourself, you're not like, bumping her, like the person, or, creating some harmful environment, then that's fine. We're not always going to have some, and that's the thing I had to learn why I am working on and learned in my practice, that it is actually, it's okay for me to not like this person and actually not even really have a reason. It's fine. Like, I don't like this person. I don't really have a reason. There's just something about this person, but that's okay. I can still be in community with them, and that can look different for many people. Maybe we're part of the same writers group. Maybe we co-work at the same place, but I don't need to interact with them, and I don't need to be fake about it. I don't need to be asking them about like their aspirations, blah 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 blah. At the same time, let me say this. Last thing I want to say, that just reminded me of something. At the same time, there has been times where, on like the forefront, I have like concluded like, oh, I don't like this person. And for whatever reason, maybe I didn't have a reason, but as I did get to speak with them, I'm like, oh, okay, I was wrong. Like I was wrong. Yeah. I was wrong, and it's okay to also, for things to go that way, because it does. If you're open enough, it can go that way as well. Yes. Where like, oh, I didn't like this person, but now I do like them. We have more in common than I thought. Like, fine.
Yeah, it's okay to change your mind. Right. It's okay to like trust your instinct, trust your gut, and it's also okay if that changes, because we change as like people. I think there's also something here, and like this is the last point until we lose. But I think that there's something there around like we thought like we had to like everyone or care for everyone in like our immediate and external communities, like from a place of survival as Black people. Like we had to stick together in different kinds of ways. As we're not really coming out of that in terms of like the state of the world, but I think that there's more room now to like address like our relationships are more complex than that. I think that there's something there for sure. But hi, this was such a good conversation. Okay, can you tell us about some of the things that you have coming up? I know you have some great things that you're offering and currently offering. So I want to like uplift that as we close out.
Yes. First and foremost, I do want to say thank you. This is like the first podcast that I have been on in regards to Community Act, which is different because I do a lot of like podcasts and presentations and shows, based on my sobriety, recovery, and sober Black Girls Club. But this year, I have decreased my number of appearances and work with the club to really get my mediation practice going. And so it's kind of like, I know I kept to bring like my recovery in it, and because it's hard. Like it's like this is what I've been talking about for the past like 4, 5, 6, 7 years, and now it's like, oh, conflict.
It's a part of it though, so I'm glad you brought it in. Yes.
Yeah, so thank you for that, and I hope that folks really receive something from my appearance on this podcast. If the last thing I do want to just let out, if you receive anything, let it be this. Just to be open. I think it's okay. I don't say it's okay, but I understand why people are guarded when it comes to relationships and when it comes to resolving conflict. I understand why people do sometimes, see conflict as black and white and be all either you're my enemy or you're not. What did Cardi B say? If we have beef forever. Trust me, girl, I get that. Like, I was saying it up until like maybe 2-3 years ago. Like we got beef forever. Like
that takes me to that drumline quote of like, got beef, you gotta grill it up and eat it. And I'm just like, let me stop. Ow. Anyway, sorry, continue.
No, you're fine. I'm saying I get it, but if you can work, and there's not a specific time limit. Time span is not how much percentage you should work, but if you can just work at being more open in your relationships, in your conflicts, if you could work at taking actionable steps like AKA reaching out to me for mediation, I believe that our relationships in our lives will improve. They will be easier. And I don't know how many folks who are listening are astro people. I'm an astro girly, okay? I'm an astro. I can tell you my moon, my rising, everything, houses, transits, we got it. We are getting into an age where Pluto is in Aquarius. And I feel like the pandemic was already a gateway to folks feeling isolated, to folks then feeling secluded and confined in a space, right? And depending on where Pluto is, but anyway, that doesn't even really matter because Pluto is like a generational, or it's a community planet. It's not necessarily an individualistic planet. And now we're going into where Pluto, like what? When does it seem to the Astro podcast? But let me just, I'm about to. It's important.
We're doing like podcast 1, 2, and 3 all in one. Y'all welcome.
But now Pluto is in Aquarius, which Aquarius is the sign of technology, of systems, of systems, of way of doing things. And I say that to say, depending on where Pluto in Aquarius is in your chart, it'll make more sense if you knew that. But generally, I am saying that we're coming into an age where the way we are commuting and the way we are accepting how we need each other is going through a death, and it's going to be and a rebirth is going to come out. Again, I feel like the pandemic and quarantine has allowed people, or made people feel that it's okay to be secluded. It's okay to be alone, because they did it for 2 years. And even now, people dip in and out of being in touch with their emotions and accepting that, okay, I kind of do feel lonely. Oh, okay, I kind of have been by myself for the past 2 years. Oh, okay. We're getting into a time. We are in a time, where that is slowly going to dissipate, and folks are going to have no choice but to accept that we do need each other. We do need community. The old systems in place are like social media, doom scrolling. That is slowly going to be making its exit. We already see what Twitter now is looking like. Instagram is a mess. They're all crashes, bugs 24/7. And I think now is the perfect time to work on our communication skills, to work on how we resolve conflict, to hone in on the values that not only do we want to see in our everyday life, but we want to embody. We want to embody. And right now is the perfect time to do that. So that had nothing to do with your question. I'm about to get any question, but I do want folks. So if you leave with anything, just leave with that. Be open. Be willing. And I am pretty sure that the universe will put opportunities and put people and situations and experiences in your way where you will be able to experience the brilliantness of community, the safetyness of community. But you have to be open. You know, if you had bad experiences in the past, be open, and the experiences that will show you, like, oh, okay, we do need each other. You know, will come and find you. In terms of my, in terms of
that hard, yes.
in terms of my mediation practice community act. Okay, so this. So I do have this. I'm like, why did I not prepare? So I'm not too sure what I'm going to do. God, I'm so goddess. Okay, I'm not too sure what discount I'm going to give the folks who are listening to on the podcast, even though I know God has told me to have it ready for this podcast. Please excuse me. It's been a very.
It'll be a surprise.
It'll be surprise. But what I will say this. Right now, I believe right now, because I do a lot of sliding scales for people who do need my services. Right now, my fees are not, in my opinion, too astronomical. I believe at the moment they're $250 an hour, and that price is divided in between the two participants. Generally, I do tell participants to book at least 2 hours, just so we can get through the phases of I have 4 phases of my mediation practice. One does, for the first phase, does consist of us sitting down and understanding, like, depending on the relationship, I don't do this for everyone, but depending on the relationship, what are our values? Like, what do we value in whatever said relationship is in front of me? And just having that chart up there to guide us through this mediation. So I do say at least to book a 2-hour minimum. And I think maybe I will give like a $50 off, or something to the effect. I'll speak with Goddess more, see like what's more impactful. But either way, I do offer a sliding scale anyway, so that's why I'm just like, I don't even know. But
you don't even have to. Like, hey, Katie, what?
Yeah, like
it's on the website, and like sliding scale is available.
Yes, a sliding scale is available. So just reach out. Even if you're not ready for mediation right now, but you're considering it and you want to talk about like the actual, the situation or the predicament you're in right now, we can literally have a one-on-one chat about it and we can move from there. But yeah, I'm just so proud of anyone and everyone who's listening to this podcast. I'm proud of you, Goddess. I'm proud of myself, because we're doing the work. It's so easy to just shut down and you know, like I did for 2 years, just stay in my apartment and drink and just shut down and not think that there was any possibilities or anything better that can come out of life. But I realized that once you stay engaged, it doesn't have to be constant engagement, but once I stayed engaged with what I wanted to feel and what I wanted out of life, which was meaningful connection. And that's really what I was looking for. But I wasn't able to find the meaningful connection because I was doing things that were this what's the word I'm looking for?
Disingenuous?
Yeah, disingenuous.
Yeah. Where do we get that dictionary? I don't know.
No, you know. The other day I read something on Twitter that says, you know, someone reads a lot when they have all these big words but cannot pronounce them, and that's me. I be reading words.
Okay, that makes me feel bad because I'm like, I read quite a bit, but like these words are not wording in my mouth.
They're not, because you actually have to use them in person, but that just shows that you read a lot. You're trying to use these words. That's me all the time. But yeah, so I'm going to end it there because I just keep going on and on and on. But I'm just so proud of all of us. We're doing the work. Even listening to this podcast, this episode is doing the work. Making intentions in the morning, night, doing the work. And I'm just proud of all of us. Thanks for having me on here, Goddess.
Thank you too. And I think you spoke to like what you're carrying with you into this. And I'm carrying that as well. Like, I feel like this conversation is a reminder of like that we're human. And like, we're going to come with a lot of different emotions, different feelings, different backgrounds into this work. no matter like where we're at on that journey. Like me and you, we facilitate this work and we are still figuring out our own selves in it. We are not perfect. And so I'm carrying that with me, a lot of grace and gratitude for like my own like human journey. And I'm so grateful for you to be on this. Like, thank you so much for coming on this podcast and sharing your work. I would love to also put your like short film in the chat because you didn't mention that, but I'm gonna mention it because folks need to watch that. I liked it. I really liked it. So thank you so much, Katie. I'm sending you off with all the blessings and cannot wait for us to speak again. Thank you so much for watching this episode. I love you so much. I'm kissing consensually. If you want that, I will ask you before kissing you. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. I encourage you to meander on down to the description link below to share this episode, tip the guests, and follow all the magical folks that made this podcast possible. Deep gratitude to all of you. Even patting myself a little bit on the back right now. Labor of love. Later, Gator, and may you walk with the ancestors. Peace out.
22,000 times a day. 22,000 times a day. 22,000 times a day. 22,000 times a day.